Hello you sexy beasts and welcome back to War Thunder. Today we're going to take a look at the new British rank 4 medium tank, the Centurion Mk. The Centurion Mk sits at battle rating 5.7 and combines the well-known Centurion chassis with the 76mm 17-pounder cannon. Besides the main armament, you also get a machine gun as a sort of coaxial. It isn't quite a coaxial, especially since it doesn't really move. This is pretty much a fixed gun position and it's very far away from the gun, but it does rotate around with the turret and can be used to spot enemy targets. The turret rotation speed of this tank is quite decent, both in realistic and in arcade modes, and one of the really defining features of this tank is the absolutely amazing gun depression of -12 degrees. The gun has a base reload speed of 7.6 seconds, which can be shaved all the way down to 5.9 seconds. Now let's trim that bush and show you some of the armor. For a battle rating 5.7 tank, this thing is actually quite well armored. You have a 76mm plate both on the upper frontal plate and on the lower frontal plate, along with some track links covered on the front. You have 150mm pretty much all the way along the front of the turret, with 89mm towards the side and rear, and a 127mm gun mantled. You also have about 51mm of armor on the side hull, covered by 6mm of side skirts. Now 76mm doesn't seem like all that much. And even with the angling, the effective thickness is only 124mm, right? Both on the top and on the bottom. This is where you would be wrong, however. Look at the angle. The constructional armor slope is 58 degrees. For all intents and purposes, this is almost 60 degrees. And this just so happens to be right the angle threshold where most shells in the game start massively losing penetration values. Let me give you some examples with the most common enemies you're going to face. Taking for example the Tiger 1 with its short 88mm gun, it actually cannot penetrate the upper frontal hull. As you can see by the footage in the background, it just bounces right off. Now of course the Tiger 1's gun can go through some of the spots in the turret, but if you angle your turret slightly, it's going to be much harder for him to actually find a spot where he can penetrate you. The biggest weak spot of this tank is the lower plate, and even the 88 doesn't have any problems going through the lower plate on this tank, even when angled. The Panther A actually has a slightly easier time having more penetration on that 75mm shell. It can occasionally go through the upper plate, although it's not guaranteed. It will guaranteedly go through the lower plate, and it won't have much problem going through the turret either. The Russian T-34-85 with its 85mm gun has some troubles against the Centurion Mk as well, especially through the upper frontal plate. It even has some problems going reliably through the turret, only having this 127mm gun plate, which it can reliably go through. And of course, lower plate, boom. Now as you can see with this tank, it is rather boxy, and as such it can be angled, which can increase the effectiveness of both of your upper plate and your lower plate. However, you do have to keep in mind your 51mm plate on the side. You don't want to overextend it, or else they are going to go straight through here. As for the turret, I do actually recommend angling towards the right side, or essentially presenting your turret like this towards the enemy, since this is where your gunner is. And by angling towards this side, not only are you going to make it of course harder for the enemy to reach your gunner in the first place, you're also increasing the overall effectiveness of this whole armor bit and even the gun mantles, only really presenting this one spot here down below where they can penetrate. And if you put something like bushes on here, well, good luck with the enemy. Now, the mobility of this tank is not very great. Even though it is designated as a medium tank, it isn't all that quick. The top speed of this tank is only 35 km/h, which is approximately equal to the T-34 American heavy tank, and slower than, for example, a King Tiger. Thankfully, and especially to those of you who have been playing the Brits throughout all this time, which probably you have given that you are watching this video, the reverse speed isn't all that bad. You can get between 12 to 13 km/h in reverse. Now here's where the really bad things start that kind of turn awesome afterwards, but start out very bad. The stock shell on the 76mm gun only has 160mm of penetration and is a solid AP shell. It is horrible against angled armor, it is horrible at range. This tank has a heavy stock grind. You're going to cry with these stock shells, especially since at 5.7 you are very often going to get up to 6.7, where with the stock shell there is nothing you can do against King Tigers, T-34s, all kinds of heavy tanks from the front. Just don't even try. And since you don't really have the mobility to get towards the sides, you are kind of in a bad position because, well, if a King Tiger spots you from the front, your armor isn't going to save you and you cannot penetrate it. The first two upgraded shells aren't all that much better. You get slightly better performance against angled armor with the first upgrade, the shot Mark 4, and slightly better penetration over range with the shot Mark 8. And then you get the APDS shell. The APDS shell is the single reason why I should grind this tank and why I should really play this tank. As soon as you unlock the APDS shell, this tank turns from honestly kind of bad to, oh my god, this thing is freaking awesome. The APDS shell has a muzzle velocity of 1200 meters per second and a penetration of 228 millimeters at 10 meters. In fact, even at 1 kilometer you still retain 189 millimeters, which means that even at 1 kilometer distance you can still go through the turret front of a King Tiger with this shell. In fact, APDS shells are also known for their performance against angled armor, and as soon as you get the APDS shell you can even, no problem, cut it right through the front upper hull of a Panther. And with a center mass shot and with this kind of shell, it's mostly going to result in a one-shot kill. So how should you play this tank then? In realistic mode it is kind of sluggish. As I mentioned before, the 35 km/h top speed is not all that great, and your engine isn't all that great either. You aren't going to accelerate anywhere quickly. In fact, the whole hull is really sluggish even when turning, given the length of the overall package. What you do have is a very fast firing gun, which, okay, given with the stock AP shells, is absolutely horrible. It's going to be a bad time, especially when you get up tiers. But once you get the APDS shell, there isn't really anything that you have to really fear with this tank. So from now on out, I'm going to talk about this tank as if we had the APDS shell unlocked, because that's really the first thing you need to go for. Now when you are in a down tier with the APDS shell, there isn't really anything that can stop you. At 5.7 you might fight some Panther Ds, although those are rare and far in between. And honestly, everything else will have problems going through to you. The Russian T-34-85 can do some damage, especially if they know how to aim for the lower plates, but they're going to bounce straight off the upper plate. They're going to have trouble going through the turret, and everything else, they shouldn't even try. T-34-76s, Panzer IVs, Panzer IIIs, they will have a hard time dealing with you. And this is where you can really act this thing like a heavy tank when you are in a down tier. This is literally a heavy tank with the medium tank spawn cost. In an up tier, things are quite different. Your armor all of a sudden will not save you from anything anymore. Panthers will go straight through you, Tiger 2s will go straight through you, pretty much any 122mm shells will go straight through you. There isn't much you can do in an up tier, at least not armor wise. So there you kind of have to use the tank like a medium tank, and actually more like a support tank. One thing I've really found success in with this tank is to stay behind, for example, tortoises, stay behind friendly heavy tanks at this battle rating, and give them support by tactically disabling King Tigers from the front by simply going through the turret front with the APDS shell and disabling the gunner, leaving the my heavies to deal with the rest of it, or even doing slight flanking maneuvers in city maps, for example, so that it can open up the flanks and provide some crossfire on enemy tanks. This is really the most effective way how you can use this tank in a teamwork sense, and, well, without singling yourself out and becoming cannon fodder to everything at 6.7. Now in arcade mode, this thing can actually be slightly harder to play, since in arcade mode everyone gets the arcade target marker, which will highlight your weak spots. Even a tanker that's not really familiar with the concept of this tank will know where to shoot you thanks to that. At the same time though, the Centurion is much more mobile in arcade and actually behaves more like a medium tank in all but top speed. And in fact, I've had this one match where I was in a down tier in arcade mode, had my APDS loaded, and I didn't even have my engine upgrades yet, but we simply rolled all the way from one side, from our spawn to the enemy spawn in the new Ardennes map, and killed everything on our way. Nothing could penetrate us, nothing could kill us. The only thing that killed me was an aircraft bomb whilst I had a track disabled. But this thing really just steamrolled through. It was literally like a British Blitzkrieg. Nothing can stop this thing in the down tier. It's freaking amazing. Oh, actually I completely forgot about the best thing this thing has when it gets into realistic mode. Being a 5.7 tank and being a tier 4 vehicle, you can effectively actually put a talisman on this thing to effectively have a tier 4 premium for research purposes. And the best thing, you can take a Wyvern with it. So to recap the Centurion Mark 1. Is it a good tank? It depends. At first, it really is not. The armor will not save you in up tier, the tank is sluggish by itself, and the stock shell is not sufficient. Not at all when you are up tier to 6.7. However, once you fully research this tank, especially once you have the APDS shell, and if you are in the down tier, this thing is freaking awesome. I seriously had so much fun with this tank, it's absolutely incredible. Angle your armor even if you're in a down tier. The Panthers will go through your lower plate, so do try and hide that if you can. Angle your turret towards the right side so that the enemy does not have a clear shot towards your gunner. If you do have some bushes, do put those on. I put them on myself because, well, I like having advantages. And as for the research path, as I've said, prioritize getting the APDS shell. You really want to get the shell as fast as possible. This is the single upgrade that will change your tank from bad to awesome. I do recommend not playing this tank in a lone wolf manner because you are not going to have much success with that. You do need teammates to support you, especially when you get hit and you get disabled. Your tank is not very fast, so you can't really deal with multiple enemies that appear on your flanks. You will go up against RU-251s, which will absolutely chew up this thing, but thankfully you don't have much problem penetrating the martyr as long as you are paying attention to where they are. And overall, this tank can be very good in the right hands, but it can be tough to play. Keep that in mind. If you've made it this far into the video, do show your appreciation by typing a heart in the comment section down below. I want to have a nice heart spam. We haven't had one of those actually ever on YouTube. I usually only do those on Twitch. Speaking of which, I still have to set up my stream. God damn it. Anyways, lads, hopefully you have enjoyed this video. Hopefully you now know how to play the Centurion Mk and actually how to take one of these things down as well. And by the way, to everyone complaining that I'm showing people how to kill tanks, new heavy tanks, and that I ruined the IS-6, that's the point! If you have enjoyed this video, do leave the like rating. If you're new around here, do check out the channel for more videos like this, and hey, maybe I earn your subscription. And as always, lads, I will see you in the next video. My name is MikeGoesBoom, and thank you for watching.
You can lift your head up to the sky, take a deeper breath and give it time. You can walk the path among the lines with your shattered frame of mind. Or instead you could always stay. We can wait right here and play until somehow you can find